Right, so this is going to be the second and last part of my project D&B, which was essentially just playing around with this little guy, which is the FUS 75 quid X111. And this was a little analog quad which blew me away because it could carry a full Hero 8 for some 5 to 6 minutes. And I've basically just been on a journey with this little guy just to see what I could really get out of it, and just having fun and learning some new things. So I've put the DJI Caddx Vista in mine. I've turned it into a pusher. I've had the Vista above, below. I've had the battery above, below. And I've really sort of come to the end of the road with this little guy. So this is just going to be a quick video as to what I found, the pros and cons. If you want my honest advice to save you running through potentially a bit of a waffly video, then if I was going to go back in time and forget about, you know, the fun of tinkering, which is what I love to do, and forgetting about all the things that I've learnt, I would probably keep this guy exactly the same as when I originally bought it for, you know, 75 quid, or should I say I didn't buy it, I got sent it for review. I wouldn't have added the DJI in, and I wouldn't turn it into a pusher. And the reason for that is adding DJI etc. Reduced the flight time quite a lot, and turn it into a pusher has not really improved its flight characteristics for me. In fact, it feels marginally worse, which is interesting because that's the opposite of the experiences that I've had with other quads in the past. So I'm just going to show you what I've done to the quad. So this is the quad as it stands today, and as you can see, I've basically managed to sandwich in the Caddx Vista, and to do that all I've done is cut down the little plastic spacers that the flight controller sits on, and then I've removed the casing from the Vista, but only the inside two pieces. And the reason why I've left the outside two pieces on is with the Hero mounted to the camera like so, I was struggling with the Vista overheating in the 30-degree temperatures we had a week or two ago. Obviously not so much of an issue now as the weather's taken a huge nosedive in the UK, but I've decided to leave it like that. And prior to that, I had the Vista every which way. I had it mounted on a little cradle in the back. I even had it underneath at one point in a little sandwich 3D printed design, but this is the best way that I found to run it. And to get it in, or to turn this whole quad into a Vista capable machine, what I've done is use little 5mm spacers on the bottom, which has allowed me to lift the ducts off the ground when I'm taking off so your props don't get caught. And I'd also done the same on the top, which is just lifted the base of the motors away from the bottom of this duct and allowed me to run it as a pusher. But as I said, in terms of flight feel or flight performance, I haven't really noticed anything beneficial. What I was expecting to feel was a removal of that sort of bucking that you can get on a quad this small, carrying a big Hero when you're descending, but all those sort of slightly nasty characteristics of these type of quads remain. And while it feels, I suppose, maybe a little bit planted when you're more planted when you're flying slowly, I think, to be honest, that might simply be because I cranked up my P gain along the way. So I wouldn't go through the hassle. Doing this has clearly added a fractional bit of weight, but I've removed the little 3D printed sort of motor guards, these things, which were on it in the first place. So the quad initially weighed, I believe it was 118 grams, and as it stands today, turned into a pusher with the Vista, and this has obviously now got a receiver end, so that's another 3 or 4 grams, and it's got the USB port which I'll come on to. It now weighs 148 grams. So essentially I've added on 30 grams, but as I said, sort of 5 or 6 grams of that is the 3D printed mount. It's got a big bolt through there. So in reality, I've probably added on maybe 20 grams, something like that, by the time you factor in the other bits and bobs we're looking at here. Which brings me on to how I've decided to run this guy, or where I am at the moment. As I said, the thing that originally amazed me about this quad was that it could carry a full Hero 8 with the battery for about 5 to 6 minutes, flying slow cinematic. But when I put the DJI unit in, that immediately dropped to sort of more like 3.5 minutes, which is a much bigger difference than I was hoping for. I was a little bit disappointed. So one of the things that I've done along the way to try and improve the way it flies with the additional weight is I decided to make a little 3D printed mount and wire in basically a USB-C PDB, or sometimes called a 24-pin USB, which if you look at it is simply just a naked USB-C with a plus and a minus on one side, which are just wired to a little regulator, in this case an iFlight 1 5 or 12 volt. Obviously we're using 5 volt here, and I've just stuck it to the base of the flight controller, and that sends 5 volts, and then I can simply plug that in to the side of the Hero, and I don't need to run the battery. And I've designed this little sort of 3D printed, not a mount, but sort of a door to do that. And it's kind of interesting how much you can lop off a Hero when you remove the gubbins. And in this case, this is a Hero 8. The door weighs 11.83 grams, and the battery weighs with the battery you're looking at sort of 36 grams, because the battery alone is sort of 24 grams. So a huge weight saving. And this little 3D printed mount that I've made, which I'm quite impressed with because it's an absolute bugger to get off, which is what it should be, weighs 4.2 grams, and the little USB weighs 3 grams. So there's been a huge weight saving, and I haven't actually had to do any sort of messing around stripping down the Hero. And I was hoping that that sort of 25-35 grams that I've saved would be reflected in flight time, but sadly I haven't seen that much of a difference. Maybe an additional 20 seconds or so. And of course part of that is because obviously we're using power to run the Hero 8, and while on a bigger 5-inch quad this sort of power demand is neither here nor there, clearly on a little quad like this, which we're already running way over its designed weight, is removing a lot of the benefits. So yeah, so where we are right now is I'm going to continue to run it with the USB, simply because I kind of like the way that works. And although this little door I've designed is made out of PLA, it's plenty strong enough for cinematic flight, which is what I'm going to be doing with it. And it's just been designed by yours truly to sort of grip into that little lip, as opposed to the normal designs which sort of end here. So it really does kind of snap into place, and there's no chance of it coming out. And as I said, the USB-C just plugs into the side. So that is pretty much that. I've designed a whole host of various gubbings along the way. You'll notice that mine has got the middle little carbon fibre brace missing, and that's because at one point I had this reversed and I had the Vista vertically between these ducts. As I said, I've had the Vista every which way. So I've various mounts I've designed along the way. This one is for the middle, this one is for the front on the old system. I've got a little Hero 8 mount which will allow you to run the Polar Pro filters, Hero 8 filters on it, but I ditched that idea because they weigh sort of 14 to 15 grams for the Hero 8. So where I am right now in terms of designs, what I've found is the benefits of running the Hero 8 in the middle are minimal. It flies awful with the Hero 8 in the middle and the battery on the bottom. And if you run the battery on the bottom, it's a pain in the arse to try and take off because the quad's always sort of falling onto one of its axis. And because it doesn't have a huge amount of power lugging this thing around, you really need to sort of force it into the air to get it up. So the way I've found that I prefer to fly it is just to keep all the weight along the top, like so. Put the battery in line with the Hero and run it like that. And it's nice and stable flying slowly, which is great for sort of cinematic footage. But as I said, if you try and dip down quickly from a height, the wind will catch it and you'll get that horrible sort of bucking bronco effect for a few seconds, which is common on pretty much all CINE whoops. Probably the Diaton Taycan suffers it a lot less for whatever reason than my Squirt does, but it's kind of one of those irritating things. But with these guys, you're not really looking at flight performance. So yeah, so as I said at the start of this video, I've sort of enjoyed tinkering around with this and all the rest of it. And as someone who's pretty much solely a DJI FPV pilot these days and really wanted to run the Caddx Vista, I've got to hold my hands up in this case and say what I've lost is greater than what I've gained. Because while the Vista and DJI has this wonderful image and there's no doubting, I would rather in this case have the additional 2 minutes flight time, which when I'm flying so slowly and cinematically, it doesn't really matter how much I can see or the detail because I'm going slow enough to react to anything anyway. And with these guys, it's all about the end result, which of course is the footage in this chat. Which brings me on very briefly to the Hero 9, which I wasn't going to buy, but when I saw the price of it when it was released, I did do. And one of the reasons I've gone down this route is I've had two naked Hero die, both with the Beta FPV case and its regulator and powered by a separate regulator. So I wanted a backup GoPro, and when this came out and it was 100 quid cheaper than I expected, and it came with the 1 year GoPro whatever it is sign up service, so you can replace it for 60 quid or whatever it is, I thought I'd give it a whirl. And I haven't used it yet for the main reason is I need to design an ND filter case for it to use it on a proper quad. But just out of interest, if you look at it, it's a hugely fat, heavy thing. 161 grams, which is huge. However, if we do the same trick and remove its ginormous battery, which weighs 32.5 grams, and you were to also remove its door, which weighs 12.9 grams, you'll immediately save 45.3 grams. And if you remove, and this applies to the Hero 8 actually, if you remove these clippy jobs on the bottom and the little metal connectors that hold it, I'm told you will save an additional roughly 10 grams. So what I'm probably going to do on my Hero 8, or possibly this one, is just remove the legs, because I only use Heroes for FPV. And while I like these little bolt-on mounts because they're really easy to transfer your Hero from one to the other, another quad, I would never run freestyle or anything like that with one of these, only ever for cinematic. So I'm going to take the legs off mine and save a bit more weight, and I'm going to design one of these little lightweight mounts with an ND filter slot, and that is how I'm going to run mine. So yeah, slightly negative end to this video, or maybe really positive. We've still got a 2.5 inch quad that can carry a Hero 8 either with its battery or without its battery, you know, for 3.5 pushing 4 minutes, depending on the sort of situation you are, which, bearing in mind it's got the DJI stuff in as well, is pretty much a result. But as I said, in this case I'd rather have the analog version, suffer the hideous FPV quality and get the additional 2 minutes flight time. So that is it. Give me a little bit of time, maybe a week or so, and I'll finalise these mounts and upload them to Thingiverse if anybody else wants to play around with this little guy. But for 75 quid, if you want a cinematic quad, I would really advise you to buy one of these rather than spending, you know, 150, 200 quid on a Taycan or a Bumblebee, because this can do exactly the same job, which is just fly really slowly and get good quality cinematic footage. Because if you want to fly, or you want a quad which will fly well, and you want to do freestyle or even longer range cinematic stuff, buy yourself a 5-inch quad. Don't mess around with ducted quads. Cheers guys, thanks, bye bye.